right here Monday through Friday on FS1.
Well, the second best dressed guy ever on our show to Catino Mobley is Chris Haynes. I mean, he brought out your like Oscar red carpet. You're bringing your A game today. Look at between you and Joy, I look like the service guy that comes up and, I should have a platter and just give you champagne. You guys are all decked out.
We should have some champagne during the show.
I'm for it.
I got some in my cup right here.
Well, there you go. You're always better, Chris. After a senior NBA insider for Yahoo Sports, somebody for years covered Cleveland playing dealer LeBron and others, former Warriors reporter, very well sourced. Listen, here, it's funny about how generally stars like a Tim Duncan or a Brady, they age pretty gracefully. Mm-hmm. And I still think LeBron's aging very incredibly gracefully. But LeBron's run the league for 12 years. He's run the league. He's been the guy. Yep. Not always on the best team, but he's been the guy. But we have a series of things that are adding up quickly. LeBron hurt. LeBron now statistically not a playoff team. Luke is not lasting. Mm-hmm. And if they don't land AD, I think it's reasonable, Chris, to say is LeBron's still remarkable, but it's not LeBron's league. That's what it feels like. That's why because I think the injury happened. I don't think they make the playoffs. I think Luke's done. I'm hearing that from people I trust. If they don't land AD, that's 0 for 4. This is a must land, right?
It is a must land, or if not must landing AD, you have to must land some other superstar out there.
Have to.
And if they don't, then I can see a scenario where this will be the year where there's a changing of the guard when you're talking about who's the face of the league.
And the narrative he's not the lead story in the league.
Well, look, I would say this, Colin. I would say this. If they don't make the playoffs, which I think all hell will break loose if that's the case, you still, throughout the duration of the postseason, every day, I still think LeBron will lead all the headlines because we know the teams that he's on face high scrutiny, and the Lakers will be under that scrutiny throughout the postseason, throughout the offseason. I still think a situation where he's out, where he doesn't make the playoffs, I still think the Lakers and LeBron will dominate the headlines even throughout the playoffs.
I don't think they make the playoffs, and I think they battle. I think Sacramento's ahead of them and better and has a better locker room.
I can't see that right now, Colin. It's hard to envision LeBron not being there. I'm not saying I don't disagree with you, but it's hard seeing LeBron not being able to will his team to a top 8 team.
You know what a scout told me 2 nights ago? He goes, they miss Lonzo more than people think. We all talk LeBron. They're like, you know what? Go look at their record with Lonzo and without. Lonzo's better than people think.
Yeah, he's more, he's a real traditional point guard, obviously. LeBron James he's a player who requires to have the ball in his hands for the majority of the time. The youngsters still haven't quite been able to fit into his scheme and how he plays. It's been a problem, man. But that's why they wanted to make a move at the trade deadline to bring in somebody else. They tried to, and they couldn't, but they still have to heal from that. I still think some of those youngsters are not quite healed over the whole. Colin, I've covered this league for a while. What happened in Indiana I've never seen before, where they were just the fans in Indiana during near the trade deadline, where they were just all on one accord chanting, LeBron's going to trade you to Brandon Ingram. That was brutal. I felt sorry for the kid. I know Magic Johnson said we shouldn't be treating them like kids, but these are young players who haven't experienced anything like that before.
All right. So you were there for the Indiana game.
I wasn't there, but it felt like I was there. I hurt for him. I've never seen the whole arena on one accord chanting something like that. And if you're LeBron, what do you do in that situation? Do you go over to Brandon and say, hey, man, that's not true. Don't listen to that. That's a tough position for him to be in as well.
Yeah. We also have another story in the league where I like Kyrie, and I think Boston will generally figure it out. But they're 0-5 last 5 with him, and 6-0, 0-5 with him, 6-0 without him. Mm-hmm. Is that Brad Stevens, and I think this is a really fair kind of belief. He's not built as a coach for a superstar score first point guard. That's not his offense. Mm-hmm. And that Kyrie and Brad's offense don't jibe. They don't work. I mean, you're watching it. They weren't competitive last night. Is it possible that Brad Stevens and Kyrie, this player, doesn't match this coach's system? For the record, Mike D'Antoni forever. You could give him all-star bigs. His offense didn't work. He didn't want Dwight Howard in L.A. That's not what he didn't want. Paul Gasol. He wanted a guard. I watched Kyrie and Brad Stevens, and I think this coach and this point guard, it doesn't really work.
Look, I will say this. I will say that the last year's team, I'm talking about the Boston Celtics, there were no stars on that team.
None.
It was like a college system. Brad Stevens was able to just get everybody to buy into it. There were no egos. And so now you're dealing with a team that you bring in Kyrie Irving, one of the top superstars in this league. You bring in Gordon Hayward. But also, Colin, you're bringing in two egos. And I'm not saying necessarily egos are a negative thing, but that's something he didn't have to manage. When I'm talking about I'm talking about Brad Stevens. He didn't have to manage that last year. And you know as good as well as anybody, in the NBA, it's a lot is about managing egos.
There's no Eric Spoelstra wasn't winning with LeBron and Wade and Bosh on X's and O's.
No doubt.
He brought them all in. It took about a year for everybody to buy him.
No doubt. And I don't know if the Celtics are better off without him, because Kyrie is still one of the top closers, if not the best closer in the league. So I think you always want to have that player on your team in the last 2 minutes. But there's definitely a familiarity of playing without him, in which the Celtics are comfortable doing.
You know, it's funny about the NBA. The NFL's mostly been about system. That outside of even Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm just finishing up the Ian O'Connor book on Belichick. I mean, Brady 4 years ago was telling people Garoppolo's replacing me. Tom had come off a kind of a rough 4 or 5 game stretch. But by and large, the NFL's a system league. The NBA is a star league and a players league. Do you think, though, that Adam Silver watches some of this stuff and there is a little regret that it feels like now the players have almost the balance has swung so heavily player that it's disrupted the teams. Some of the owners are complaining. I mean, what do you make of the star mobility? Are you always for it?
I'm always for it. Look, I think, answer your first question, Adam Silver, I think there's a little bit of give and take, because obviously I think Adam Silver likes that the NBA just dominates all the headlines.
No,
yes. The Super Bowl, media week, it was NBA heavy that whole week leading up to the Super Bowl. And so I think Adam Silver does like that. But I do think he's probably, general manager, of course, but the league is getting a little bit exhausted with players requesting trades and then getting what they want.
By the way, think of this. So Adam Silver was very pro-player. LeBron goes, give us a longer All-Star break. And he does. And LeBron says, fewer back-to-backs. And I agree with that. And he does. And the players have responded by James Harden, LeBron James, Saturday night ABC games. I'm going to take it off. It's like, timeout. We gave you fewer back-to-backs.
It's that load management.
We gave you a longer All-Star break. You got it on Saturday night in the big game of the week.
Yeah.
You can't take it off. I do feel there is a tipping point, and I don't know. I mean, again, I talk a lot of NBA, so outside of the NFL, it's my number 2 topic all the time. I find, do you buy into the Durant, Kyrie, land in New York thing?
I buy into it that it's a real possibility. I do. I believe I came on this platform earlier in the year and first, talked about the New York Knicks and the Kevin Durant link. But, Kyrie, look, he came in, beginning of the season, said, he vowed to be a Boston Celtic. He's going to resign, and kind of went back on that right now.
Right.
And we've always heard Kyrie and New York were always going to be a link. So, no, I think they're going to be real players. I think what New York is doing, they're positioning themselves to be able to get 2 max players, and depending on what they do with that, if they are able to get the number 1 pick in the upcoming draft, that's big implications. So, no, I think New York is going to be real players, seriously.
By the way, I'll just ask you some direct questions. Luke Walton, coaching the Lakers next year, yes, no?
It's hard to see that. It's hard to see that happening.
Yeah, that's no. I am Anthony Davis, Laker, yes or no?
Next year?
Yeah.
I'm going to say no as of right now.
Wow.
I'm going to say no.
Wow. Okay, that's not great. I'm telling you, if you are right,
it's because, Colin, look, is New Orleans, are they going to make a deal with the Lakers? Are they going to do that? Like, they didn't do it, obviously, at the deadline. Was that because of pride? Was that because they do want to see what Boston has to offer?
Well, they fired their GM.
They did fire him, but the ownership has the final say. If they wanted that deal done, it would have gotten done. And so that's why, like, this ownership, are they adamant that they're not trading him to the Lakers as long as he's under contract? That's what I don't know. So that's why I lean towards saying.
I want to throw one other team at you that I think is to me the most interesting team in the playoffs. Mostly because Westbrook's just polarizing and Paul George is having an incredible.
You like Westbrook, Colin?
I think he did something last night that wears me out. Joey disagrees, but when little 10-year-old boys act like 10-year-old boys, I don't think it's a big deal. What do you make of Oklahoma City? When Russell shoots less than 18, they win.
Yeah.
When he shoots over 18, they lose. It's like real simple. It's not a triple-double win-loss. It's like shoot less, win. Can Russell Westbrook go into the playoffs? No last 6 minutes. It's Paul's team. Can he emotionally, psychologically come to terms with that? Because I saw just a 3-game stretch. He went crazy. Westbrook and shot 30 times a game. They went 1 and 2.
Yeah. And I think, if you're an OKC Thunder fan, you're saying, thank God for Paul George, because without him and his play, and
he's been amazing.
He's right now, he's top 2 on my MVP ballot right now, man. Giannis and him, he's ridiculous. But I don't know, Colin, to answer your question, because we haven't seen him tone it down.
That's why the Thunder to me are fascinating. I kind of feel I know what I'm getting with everybody in the playoffs. I have no idea. Paul George, love him, never been great in the postseason.
Yeah.
He has never quite been dependable. And Westbrook, he has the last 2 years gotten a little unhinged in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And now you have pressure on Billy Donovan. Adams not a scorer. Yet you have a bunch of non-scorers, 2 scorers, one's more efficient. Like I could see a complete burnout. Or I could see him Western Conference Finals. I think of all the interesting teams in the playoffs, OKC's easily number 1.
Yeah, no, for real. And I think if there are going to be that team that gets to the conference finals, I think it's going to be Paul George who leads them that way.
Has to be.
It has to be. Like you said, he talked about his efficiency. He's doing it on both ends. I think Russ, look, I give Russ credit in that he's shooting poorly this season, but he is deferring a little bit more offensively to Paul George, more than I ever seen him do, even when Kevin Durant was over there.
Oh, no question.
So I give him props. I give him props for adjusting his game and modifying it for the best of his ability.
By the way, I'm looking at these highlights. God, Paul George is.
Can you imagine him doing this right now? At this stage of his career, coming off of an injury, I never thought he had this next level.
He is the best available 2-way player in the league. Giannis or him. Giannis is great.
Yeah, I would still give it to Paul just because I think Paul has a more well-rounded offensive game.
So do I.
But no doubt.
Just these highlights of Paul. God,
it's ridiculous.
And he feels like, I mean, this is weird to say, but it's almost like he's more athletic post-surgery.
Whatever game that was, I believe it was double overtime when they had.
Utah.
Utah. He pulled a 360 dunk in double OT. Who does that in double overtime? Now, your leg's supposed to be fatigued. That's a layup right there at that juncture. But I've never seen it before.
Yeah, he literally looks better post-surgery. Chris Haynes, good seeing you.
Always, my guy. Thank you.
You bet. Joey, with the news.
No.